Chapter 2. That same sun, having now risen from behind the gasometers, stretched down a tentative ray towards a rarely washed bedroom window at number 6 Abaddon Street. Passing with some difficulty through the murky pane, it displayed itself upon an inner wall as a pale lozenge of light surrounding a noseless statuette of Our Lady. This mantelpiece beatification of the Blessed Virgin was as usual lost upon the room's tenant, John Vincent O'Malley, was what the textbooks are wont to describe as a late riser. Usually, the lozenge of light would move noiselessly across the mantelpiece wall until it reached the cracked mirror, and then reflect itself onto the face of the sleeper, thus awakening him from his restful slumbers. But today, as for some days past, it was to be denied its ritual. Today it would find but an empty pillow, showing naught of a recumbent head, but a slight indentation and a brill cream stain. The coverlet was tossed aside, and a pair of ragged pyjama strides lay in an athletic spitz posture upon the linoleum. A time-worn tweed jacket was missing from its appointed hook behind the door. It was not yet 8 of the clock, and John O'Malley was no longer at home to callers, for John O'Malley had important business elsewhere. John O'Malley was gone a-golfing. "Fur!" The cry echoed across the allotment, struck the wall of the Seaman's Mission, and passed back over the head of a curly-headed son of air, clad in soiled Fair Isle slip-over and rolled-up tweeds.
"For and have a care!"
O'Malley swung the aged club, the relic of a former and more refined age, with a vengeance, and struck the little white pill a mighty blow. The ball soared some 4 feet into the clear morning air, and fell to earth in the midst of Jim Pooley's radish patch. Jim stifled a titter, and read from a dog-eared exercise book entitled The Now Official Handbook of Allotment Golf. Unless rendered totally inextricable by nature of being unreachable, i.e. under more than 4 feet of water, or beyond climbing capability, the player will play the stroke. Should the player, however, endanger the growth of his opponent's radishes, he will forfeit the hole. O'Malley scratched his head with a wooden tee and eyed Pooley with some suspicion. "I don't recall that bit at the end, Jim," said he. "May I venture to ask whether the rule applies to runner beans, possibly of the variety which you uprooted from my plot yesterday whilst attempting that trick shot of yours on the 4th? Pooley made a thoughtful face. "Beans are not specifically mentioned," he said, carefully examining the note he had so hastily scribbled. "But if you are making an official request to have them included in the handbook, then I think we might stretch a point and pencil them in." At this moment, the 2 golfers suddenly threw themselves down, commando fashion, into a clump of long grass. An explanation for this extraordinary behaviour was almost immediately forthcoming as the distinctive tuneless whistling of small Dave signalled the approach of that midget as he took his regular morning shortcut through to the Butts estate. Allotment golf had not yet caught the eye either of the allotment holders or the general public, and both Pooley and O'Malley wished to keep it that way. They would have greatly preferred to golf upon one of the municipal courses, but circumstances had decreed that their photographs now appeared upon every persona non grata board throughout the county. It had all appeared so trivial at the time. The small disagreements, the occasional bout of fisticuffs, hardly policed matters, one would have thought. Golfers, however, are a clannish bunch with rather a conservative attitude towards sport. The 2 Brentonians' extraordinary conception of the game had not been appreciated. Their constant rule-bending and wild club-swinging, their numerous bogus claims to the course record, achieved for the most part by omitting to play the more difficult holes, their total disregard for other players' safety, refusing to shout "4" before what O'Malley described as heavy putting, had been too much to bear. The secretary of one course had shown moments of rare tolerance. He had respected Pooley's request to play the holes in reverse order. He had suffered O'Malley playing in cycling cape and fisherman's waders one particularly wet day, but when Pooley relocated all the tee markers in order to make the game more interesting, and O'Malley dug a second hole upon the 3rd green in order to sink birdie 4, stern measures had been taken. The 2 potential Ryder Cup winners had been given what the French refer to as la ruche de la bum. Thus, in a moment of rare inspiration, necessity being, like Frank Zappa, the mother of invention, and Jim Pooley being a man of infinite resource when cornered, allotment golf had been born. It had much to recommend it. There was no queuing up to be done, no green fees to pay, no teeing off in front of critical observers to be suffered. Above all, they could invent their own rules as a fancy took them. As originator, Jim took sole charge of the exercise book until every detail was clarified. This, he told O'Malley, was what is called a divine right. A certain amount of subterfuge was called for, of course. They had no wish to alert any of the other allotment holders to the sport, for fear that it might catch on. It had been a moment of rare inspiration indeed on Pooley's part, but one which was to play its part in changing the face of Brentford as we know it for good and all. Small Dave had departed upon his round, and John O'Malley set to it once more to shift his ball from Pooley's radish patch and belt it heartily towards the fourth hole, which lay cunningly concealed between old Pete's wheelbarrow and his battered watering can.